What is going on, guys? My name is Chimpact, and I'm back with the playoff picture. This is the second week of the playoffs, and we are moving on to the conference championship games with the Rampardos versus the Luchas and the Arcaniners versus the Loudreds. Fizzy and Adrive have played each other once this season, and in that game, Fizzy had a rough start. He let out a T-Tar against the Sylveon, and the Sylveon went for Hidden Power Rock on the Charizard Y switch-in, and it dealt way over 50%. Fizzy thought that he would be able to roost off the damage from the Hyper Voice even if it resisted, because it's a fire type. Charizard Y has really good special defense, but it was still doing around 50%, so he's forced to go for a Fire Blast. It pretty much 1-for-1 traded with the Sylveon because everything else on his team could do the 15 to 20% to the Sylveon, so it couldn't Wish Protect off. But as soon as the Charizard went down, he went out to Heliolisk and fired off a Hyper Voice, dealing around 80% to the Jolteon. And because the Jolteon took that much percent damage, it really freed up the Tyranitar to not have to deal with the Jolteon. He could just use the Heliolisk to answer the Jolteon, and it just put it really just put Adrive in a really bad position. And after that, Fizzy just had an answer to all of Adrive's threats, but Adrive didn't really have an answer to all of Fizzy's threats, because with the Toxic Spikes up, the Blastoise couldn't really switch into a lot of attacks. Ironically, the Blastoise did have Mirror Coat, so when the Heliolisk went for the Volt Switch on the Blastoise, it did knock out the the Starmie because it had way too much special bulk. If he had less special defense, he would have took more from the Volt Switch, which meant he would have took more damage. So the Mirror Coat would have actually knocked out the Starmie. I don't know if that would have changed the results of the game, but the Starmie did get off a Scald against the Victini later on in the game, which allowed the Pursuit to knock out the Victini even without the Victini switching out, because the Victini was at like 25%. So he had pretty much, like I said, Fizzy had pretty much an answer to every single one of Adrive's offensive threats. For the Victini, he had the T-Tar. For the Jolteon, he had T-Tar, but because it took the Hyper Voice earlier on in the game, he didn't really need an answer to that. For the Blastoise, Blastoise isn't really an offensive threat. The Uxie wasn't really an offensive threat. For the Aggron, he had the Will-O-Wisp Weezing, but Adrive didn't really have an answer to Fizzy's offensive threats, and he really got pressured by them. And in their rematch, I don't really know how Adrive is going to handle it, because with the Toxic Spikes, it's either going to be Blastoise getting poisoned for the entirety of the game, because like are you really gonna use a turn to Heal Bell when you're up against Fizzy's offensive team? He has the T-Tar, he has the Charizard, he has the Garchomp, he has the Heliolisk as heavy hitters. And it's not like they're heavy hitters. They're heavy hitters that match up really, really well against Adrive's defensive Pokemon. He has the Focus Blast for the Aggron. The Aggron's also not really going to be able to do too much against the Weezing anyway. If he doesn't bring in the Blastoise to Rapid Spin, what is he going to do? Is he going to bring in Salamence to Defog? If you bring Salamence to Defog, that's another turn where Salamence has to Defog. The T-Tar matches up well against the Salamence with the Stone Edge, so he can Stone Edge the Salamence and stuff like that. If he brings in a Chople Berry, he can take a Break and knock out the Salamence with the Stone Edge. So I don't know. It's going to be really difficult for Adrive to deal with the Toxic Spikes, to deal with the Stealth Rock, to deal with the offensive threats, and still try to threaten Fizzy at the same time, because he does have the Weezing, he does have the T-Tar. It's not like Fizzy doesn't have defensive answers to Adrive's team. So I think Fizzy definitely has the edge. I would give him the go. As much as I want Adrive to win, he's a buddy of mine. I'm going to give Fizzy the W here. And on the other side, we have Movone from the Loudreds against Sceptile MC of the Arcaniners. So because they are division rivals, they do play each other 2 times in the regular season. And in the first encounter, Movone had a rough start in the season. He started off 0-2. And in week 3, he's up against his division rival in the Arcaniners. And I don't understand. He just doesn't click Stealth Rock in some games. Against Mega Mogwai in his first series, he didn't click Stealth Rock all game, and because he didn't click Stealth Rock, he lost that game against Mega Mogwai. And I think in this game as well, he didn't click Stealth Rock at all, and I think it lost him this game as well, because he has the Landorus, he has the Manectric, he has the Azelf. They all have great U-turn, Volt Switch opportunities to force switches to get off chip damage, And with the Stealth Rock, he can get KOs. He has Shadow Sneak on his Dusknoir. He has Foul Play and Toxic on the Umbreon, so he can get chip damage off and get chip damage kills. But he doesn't do that. He doesn't set up Stealth Rock all game. And Sceptile MC sets up Stealth Rock early with his Miltank. He has Superpower Draco Meteor Goodra, which kind of catches his Umbreon off guard because I guess he didn't expect the Draco Meteor from the Goodra to come through, and it made him lose his Umbreon earlier on in the game, which would have been a great answer to the not a great answer, but it forces some 50-50s with the low pony on the Protect. He also has the Landorus that he can switch in, and he sacks his Pokemon pretty liberally throughout the entire season. But in this game, he sacked his Azoth when it was at 100% HP, when he could have used the Landorus to take a hit from the Sizzler and deal a little bit of damage. He could have used the Manectric to take a little bit of damage with the Sizzler, but he sacks the Azoth, and he eventually just loses to the game to Low Pony and Scizor, just knocking out the rest of the team. And he just got manhandled because he didn't click Stealth Rock. If he clicked Stealth Rock, it would have been a completely different game, but he didn't, and he lost that one. But in their second game, Movone plays it pretty well. He leads off with the Landorus. Sceptile MC leads off with the Miltank. They're both scarfed. Miltank outspeeds Landorus. But the thing is, Sceptile MC, he uses the wrong EV spread or something where he didn't outspeed the Landorus. So the Landorus went for the U-turn against the Miltank, deals a little bit of damage, and he goes out to Fortress to set up Stealth Rock to route spin away the hazards or whatever. But the Miltank goes for Ice Punch, and it freezes the Fortress. So the Fortress is frozen, and I said before, Movone doesn't click Stealth Rock a lot, and that was his opportunity to click Stealth Rock and break a Shiftry stash. It would have been pretty huge if he actually broke the stash of the Shiftry, because later on in the game, I'll explain it. So the Fortress is frozen, so it gives MC the opportunity to go out into his Low Pony. His Low Pony has Fire Punch, but I think Sceptile MC makes another misplay and goes for the Fire Punch against the Fortress instead of the High Jump Kick. Had he gone for the High Jump Kick, I don't know if it would have 2-hit killed the Fortress, because Fire Punch does a lot more damage than High Jump Kick. And the Fire Punch did like 60-70%, so I'm not sure if High Jump Kick would have been able to 2-hit kill anyway. But because he clicked the Fire Punch, he thawed the Fortress, so he was able to go for a Gyro Ball. So the Fortress could have stayed frozen had he not clicked the Fire Punch. So he goes for the Gyro Ball, gets off a lot of damage, and he predicts, Sceptile MC makes a great prediction, goes out into his Gothitelle to expect the Gastrodon to come in, and he goes for Energy Ball, and he's able to knock out the Gastrodon after that great play that he just made. And the game goes on, and neither player sets up Stealth Rock, and in the late game, he has a Shiftry. Sceptile MC has a Shiftry and a Low Pony left, and Movone has a Landorus and a Manectric left. So the Shiftry is Fake Out, Dark Pulse, and Icy Wind, I think a Grass move. So the Shiftry has a Focus Sash, and its ability is Pickpocket. So Pickpocket is an ability where if you don't have an item, you take your opponent's item if you hit them with an attack. So he has a Shiftry at 100%, no Stealth Rocker up, so he's at 100%. He can activate the Focus Sash on the U-turn, and he can take the Choice Scarf of the Landorus and knock out the Manectric in 2 hits with Dark Pulse, and knock out the Landorus with a Dark Pulse and a return from the Low Pony. But he clicks Icy Wind. The thing is, Sceptile MC didn't have the foresight to go for the Dark Pulse because he forgot that he had the Pickpocket ability, and he was going to be able to pickpocket after the Sash activated. And he actually clicked Icy Wind on the Landorus as it went for U-turn. So he goes out into the Manectric, it gets Icy Winded, and the Manectric is able to just go for the Flamethrower, knockout, Thunderbolt, Flamethrower, whatever, knock out the Low Pony. He goes out into Shiftry, it's at 1%. It has a Scarf, but it's at 1%, so he has to flinch the Landorus, and it has to flinch the Manectric down, but he doesn't get the flinch, and the Louders win the game. So had he actually not gotten frozen, he would have been able to set up Stealth Rock and prevent that from ever happening. But Sceptile MC messes up a little bit, but it was still a great showing from him. He played it really, really well, and I think he can knock out Movone with the prep that he has been doing all season long. He made a Scarf Miltank, which is very, very smart. I really love that idea. I think that Sceptile MC just out preps a lot of his opponents, and he plays it really, really well. He predicted the Gastrodon in that game to come in on the Fire Punch, and he executed. He made that play. The thing is, at the end, he didn't execute, but that's a really hard to play to see coming, because you got to remember when Sash activates, when Pickpocket activates, etc., etc. So it was a very hard play hard to see, and in the future he'll see that, so that's good. But I think even though Movone, it's difficult because Movone really hasn't lived up to his potential. I mean, he is on a 5-game winning streak, 6-game winning streak. He played really, really well against Mogwai last week, even though I think Mogwai should have beat him last week. He clicked Will-O-Wisp instead of Flare Blitz for a reason against the Weavile in the end game, but that's another story. I don't know. He doesn't click Stealth Rock, and I think he needs to click Stealth Rock. Just click Stealth Rock, Movone, click Volturn, and you can win this game. But Sceptile MC, I don't know. He just outpreps his opponents. He outplays his opponents. He plays it really, really well. He sticks to his game plan, and so I really have the Arcanines beating the Loudreds in this one. And I got Fizzy beating A-Drive, so I got the Arcanines versus the Aluchas in the finals. Next week, let me know who you guys have in the finals. Hope you guys enjoyed. Leave a like. And I'll see you guys next week for the finals. Peace.